Alright, welcome to the first episode of Sed Says. Fucking fantastic title, I know. Um, what I'm going to be doing in this one is going to basically be obviously once a week. It's just going to be a random thought process of myself, obviously something related to UK Esports more than likely. So this week I'm going to start it off with the banger of 5 things that I'd like to see from UK Esports orgs. I've touched on it a bit recently. Now obviously just because if I say it doesn't mean that my opinion is correct. It doesn't mean that that's all what everyone should go and follow. It is literally just a personal perspective of what I'd like to see from orgs, what I'd like to see them do more. And obviously, hopefully, it is something that as time goes on, we do get to see. But yeah, we'll start off. So number one, this is not in order, by the way, it's not even prioritizing everything that needs to be kind of discussed or improved upon. It's just essentially 5 things that I've thought of that would be nice. There's a bunch more as well, but I'm not going to do a 4-hour video on the topic, so it is what it is. But yeah, starting off, number one. So maintain an up-to-date website. This is like one of the most common occurrences I see within UK orgs is a mixture of lack of information put on the organisation websites, if they've even got a website, that is. And a lot of the time it's old information, so old rosters, no articles have been posted in a while, you've still got old stream information of kind of players that have played previously, results haven't been updated. Even sponsors and partners haven't been updated, so it's something that definitely needs to be taken a lot more seriously. This is also to be combined with that more needs to be done in terms of the promotion side of it, so promotion through the website, whether it be sponsors, content, social accounts for relevant players and staffs within the organisation, because of the amount of times you you also see things like a new team will come on board and nothing's remotely said about the old team that used to play for them, sort of thing. So you'll see a Twitter post on it and be like, this team has now departed, sort of thing, if you're lucky. And then a new team will come in, they'll write a glowing article but won't mention it to kind of the previous roster that's not worked out, which I find a bit like lack of respectful to an extent in certain scenarios as well. But yeah, I mean, just to it's irritating from my point of view that all you see is the good. If it's kind of bad news, they won't put it. It's the same goes for kind of results as well. You get a lot of organisations that will put the wins on their website and they won't put the defeats, which is also a bit irritating. But the main reason behind this is because of I don't think that many people within UK esports sector actively visit organisation websites because they know it's not necessarily up to date. Also, from an outsider's perspective, if they don't know too much about the scene in general, and they'll go onto an organisation website and they're going to take what information's in front of them, essentially. So if the information is old, someone is coming away with the wrong information, which when there is a lack of information in general available, then obviously for the small times that there are, to have that information being wrong, not exactly the most helpful. Also, from an investor's point of view, if they see a lack of activity on organisation websites, why are they necessarily going to choose you if you can't even update a website regularly? But part of the reason why esports has grown so big, and I'll kind of mention this on one of the other points later on as well, is because of the effects of the internet as a whole and the reach that it has through social channels. So why not do all you can to promote that? I know it's easier said than done in a lot of scenarios, but especially when it comes to things like articles and things like that, but to at least have a base in terms of the information you have listed on your website is the correct and current information should be an absolute minimum. So yeah, number two. Number two, or my second point, of things that they can potentially improve on would be better event coverage. So don't get me wrong, it would also be helpful to have event coverage from the events themselves to a lot higher standard, but at the same point you can't rely on others to do shit for you. Thus, organisations need to be a lot more proactive when it comes around to doing event coverage, whether it be the usual constant game coverage of how the match is going, so like midway through the match rather than just the results. But even when the results are used, use more things like graphics. I think you've seen, or if you haven't seen, like Optic Gaming, obviously the size of the org is different, but like the graphics that they've been using when they do things like match results recently have been absolutely fantastic. And it just becomes so much more appealing when you're clicking down a social feed, right? So you want to be able to draw people's attention. So when it comes to graphics and stuff like that on tweets, then use them as much as possible, because there's a lot more chance that they're going to get noticed than what a 2-sentence like typing-esque tweet is necessarily going to do for you. So I would definitely like to see like more things like that. Event coverage can also obviously include whether it be like player interviews, and just kind of general coverage of the event as you're going through it. Certain orgs do it. I'm not obviously throughout this whole thing, I'm not saying it applies to every single organization. I'm just generalizing a lot. But yeah, I mean, my perspective is because a small it's one of the small factors in achieving support from people. At the end of the day, overall content is severely lacking when it comes to events, as much as certain organisations do a good job. A lot of them do next to fuck all, so especially when that comes around to the higher calibre of teams, the players and orgs that people would usually say they would like to see stuff from, they need to be doing a better job, especially as the scene and kind of esports as a whole continues to grow. So yeah, I mean, it's only a small point on event coverage, but it is something that I do feel like a lot of organisations can do better on. Thirdly, we'll move into communication and relationships. So this is an overall viewpoint, but even within some of the top UK organisations, I've been told countless stories about the inactivity of communication between organisation management and players and staff within the organisation. Now don't get you wrong, it works in both ways. I also know many orgs that have had teams and consistently chased players for information, and it makes such a small task significantly more long-winded. But this also falls into the category of just genuinely getting to know your players and staff better. Like at the end of the day, relationships are key to keeping people happy, and kind of enticing people to stay within the organisation, and even from like an outside perspective, get people to support that team and organisation as a whole. I do feel like the kind of relationships that you see in normal world scenarios, for prime example, like how many times have you seen, or you yourself or someone else that's bemoaned their manager, your manager's a dickhead, I don't like my manager, I hate my manager, blah blah blah. And you get that scenarios all the time, right? So I feel like when that does happen, you become a bit less motivated to work to the kind of standard that you normally would if you're in an environment with people that you don't necessarily get along with or you don't have good communication with. So I do think it is fundamental that organisations do a lot more to ensure that the communication and the relationships they have with staff and players are a lot better. Again, not pointing out specific people in this for the most part anyway, but it is just a general thing that definitely does need to be improved going forward. My fourth point that I'm going to mention is the kind of use of apparel and merchandise. One thing that I'm always going to kind of specifically pinpoint within UK Esports at the moment is there's not really much of a fan base around many organisations. There's a couple here and there that do have a bit of a following in terms of, and I mean following in terms of actually people that like really support the organisation more so opposed to kind of, I would rather that or beat that team sort of thing, but they're not necessarily someone that follows everything the organisation does and fully gets behind them. So when it comes to apparel merchandise especially, like the one thing that I feel like a lot of orgs don't do is promote it enough firstly. However, it also comes down to the fact that a lot of UK organisation apparel, and that being said, it's not just UK orgs, it's throughout, it's globally. But it's all the vast majority of it is very generic merchandise. I would like to see more people go down the way of treating it as a normal clothing brand, so to speak. So creating merch that your everyday Joe would be interested in as well. Because obviously, especially with the social stigmas that still apply to esports, especially within the UK, as much as I've seen like in my local area, that being said, about a year ago, I saw a random dude in literally in my like corner shop with a Nip jersey on. I was like, what the hell? But you like there's still the social stigma about kind of wearing that sort of like stuff out and about, so to speak. So to kind of make the simple but like elegant-esque designs that you can kind of get away with wearing in your everyday scenario is definitely something that I feel like more orgs should kind of try and go down that way, on top of obviously having the standard of standardized stuff. combine this with, I also feel that it is quite hard to promote to a high level due to the fact that obviously, like I've said, the kind of lack or small fan bases that do exist. So it is something that, combined with other points that I've mentioned, and obviously a whole bunch more, that you coincide this as part of it, and going forward by doing it, it should be very helpful. And last but not least, what a fucking surprise! Content, content, content. So this is obviously a well-discussed one at this point, but I've got to throw it in. So whether it be articles, YouTube videos, Twitch stream, plays TV uploads. Now, obviously there's no point in just putting content out there for the sheer sake of doing content, right? As it stands, though, it is very non-existent, and even when it does happen, it's inconsistent, to say the least. But for the most part, barring a couple of exceptions. However, my two big reasons for stating that we need more content is, firstly, that it's very hard for newcomers to come into the scene and understand who is who, what's the difference between this org and that organisation, who are the people behind the tournaments, what does that guy do, how does he do that. That information is very, very low key, unless you've kind of already built your relationships up to the point where you can kind of query that and find it out. In terms of publicly available information, it is next to none. So obviously combine this with the fact of even necessarily having that information available for when it comes to, say, casters and things like that. And obviously the quality of UK casters has always been bemoaned by players in a lot of scenarios, as much as I think we do have a lot of talented casters. But when they're kind of performing at that UK Esports level, when a lot of the times they're kind of newer to the casting environment, when that's a thing, having that information available so they can tell the differences, so they can tell what role that player generally plays if he's played a different role in a previous team, it all adds to the quality of the stream by having that key information. So by putting more stuff out there in those scenarios is definitely something that we need to see more of. And it will help the scene overall in many aspects, not just from a playing perspective, not even from an analytical perspective, which is the point that I'm going to go into now. So as a whole, as I've kind of touched on earlier, esports has grown exponentially due to the fact of the reach that you can achieve due to social media, due to YouTube, due to streaming. And it's primarily because of the analytical data you can get out of it provides key demographics to businesses. So without it, is it a wonder why the UK scene severely lacks non-endemics and better investment overall, apart from kind of just UK-based people that kind of want to see the scene grow? And combine that with a couple of endemics that are floating around the scene, it's because at the end of the day, the analytically, the data that UK organisations can provide is not worthwhile for them to do so. So this can be offset by people obviously having strong networking skills and forging investment that way, but at the same time, it's not always going to work like that. And again, it is always going to be a very lengthy process in a lot of scenarios to try and forge those relationships in the first place. So yeah, definitely content has to be something that people start putting a lot more effort into it. Again, it's easier said than done, but it's got to be a mixture from everyone. It's got to be from players, it's got to be from organisations, it's got to be from staff. And I know for a fact that there's so many times I've spoken to so many people, and I'm probably one of the biggest faults at this as well, in terms of I had so many ideas for content, e.g. the stuff that I'm doing now, which I've had for 2-3 years, but I've lacked the desire in many ways to start doing it, lack the motivation, lack the time, whatever it necessarily is, but 9 times out of 10 it's just excuses. So I'm not saying that's always going to be the case. Obviously, every person is going to be different in terms of what they can do, but I know so many people that have also talked about and discussed about doing various bits of content, and 2 years down the line they still haven't done anything. So it's got to be a combined effort from everyone, but it's definitely something we all need to work on. But obviously that will be the kind of the 5 key points that I'd like to see from UK orgs at the moment. I say key points. There's a whole other list of bits, especially when you come into more of the business side of things, more so than the day-to-day operations. But yeah, like I said, just 5 kind of points I would like to see from orgs, and hopefully by doing so it would improve things overall. But obviously that will be the end of the video, so remember to like, comment, subscribe, hate, whatever it is you feel like doing today, and that will be the end of the video, so peace.